Hello everyone, so today I will be talking to you all about the history and making of the Phantom of the Opera mask. So as most or all people of the theater realm know, the Phantom of the Opera is one of the most famous shows that is currently running on Broadway. This show is known for its music, the plot, and the most famous and iconic costume piece, the Phantom Mask. The Phantom of the Opera musical is the most popular story in today's culture when it comes to the story of the Phantom of the Opera. Even though Andrew Lloyd Webber's production is known to be the version that everyone knows, it is not the only one. This story has been adapted by numerous writers and has evolved over a century of time through literature, movies, and through theater. It should be noted that along with the story changing in specific ways throughout the years, the details of the famous mask has also evolved too. So where did this story all begin? Well, the idea of the Phantom of the Opera all began in 1911 by the now famous story writer Gaston Leroux. He was a journalist, novelist, and playwright of his time. He was known to be a writer of detective novels, but when he saw the Grand Opera House, he was transfixed by the architecture and history of the building. The building stood 17 stories high and covered approximately 118,500 square feet. The building had a man-made lake, which was due to an underground stream running beneath the site. The Opera House was built between 1860 and 1875. This magnificent building was a labyrinth, and Leroux knew it was perfect for his phantom character. The building and its entirety is the reason for the creation of this character and the story. When it comes to the Phantom's mask, he wrote it to be that this character had worn this mask for all of his life because his mother could not look at his disfigured face. It is said that he wears a black mask that hides his entire face and wears a fake nose when attending the opera's shows. On the original cover of the novel, it shows the Phantom wearing a simple black Dominical mask that hides 3/4 of his face. However, when Leroux first wrote this novel and this famous story, pretty much, it received little to no attention. However, as we all know, it was adapted over numerous years into different stories and into the musical we all know and love today. So the first adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera story was done by Lon Chaney in 1925. This was a silent black and white film, and it is known to be an original film adaptation of the novel and the most faithful to the original novel. This horror movie became famous due to the self-devised makeup that the Phantom had wore. The makeup was iconic due to it being so shocking when it was revealed under the mask. The mask covered most of the face and left the chin visible. This mask was mainly used in earlier adaptations of this story. It created the feeling of fear and uneasiness due to the fact that emotions and visual cues in the facial expressions were hidden. In 1943, another adaptation was done by Claude Rains. It didn't receive the most enthusiastic response upon its release, but it brought a lot of firsts to the Phantom of the Opera. It was the first film adaptation that was colorized, and it added a romantic twist to the horror plotline. This romantic twist was liked by many, and it soon became very popular to make it the classic that it is today. The mask that Claude Rains wears as the Phantom is the complete opposite of the mask in the previous adaptation. The mask is worn to hide the Phantom from his disfigured face, which was burned by acid, and it allows him to sneak on stage during a production where actors were wearing a similar mask to his. The mask is bluish-white and covers 3/4 of his face. It's sleek, it has contours of a human face, and has a stark contrast to the more realistic 1925 mask. In 1962, there was another adaptation of this story which was done by the British Hammer Films Company. It brought back the horror genre, but it also had a similar plot line to the 1940s adaptation. It was known that this film was better, but at the end of the film, the Phantom becomes a tragic hero and sacrifices himself for Christine, in which many did not like. The Phantom was badly burned by nitric acid, like the Claude Rains version. However, this incident left his hands and left side of his face severely damaged and scarred, and so he wears a mask that covers his whole face and only leaves one eye visible. He removes the mask in a few scenes in the end to show how horrible his face looks. In 1974, a lesser-known movie called The Phantom of the Paradise was created by Brian De Palma. This story is a mix of The Phantom of the Opera and Faustus. In this story, a character by the name of Winslow Leach ends up getting his face caught in a record press, which mutilates half of his face, and his right eye becomes useless, creating him to be the so-called Phantom. He then signs a record deal and loses his soul, which then relates back to the story of Faustus. This character hides his scarred face with a silver owl helmet/mask, and the mask has a black lens over the right eye hole which covers his damaged eye. In 1983, the Phantom story was adapted into a lesser-known TV film show. This show differed from the original plot of the novel, and it ended up making the Phantom more like previous adaptations, with the character being slightly mad. This vengeful character is avenging his late wife and wears a mask covering his whole face due to being badly burned by acid. This TV show keeps to a dark and suspenseful atmosphere, just like previous versions of the story. In this story, the Phantom wears two different masks and reveals his face only at the end of the film. These masks that are worn resemble a human face. In 1986, the musical adaptation of the story was written by Andrew Lloyd Webber. As a stage production, this retelling of the original story was dramatized to better capture the attention of the audience. This is the most well-known version of the Phantom story, and his white half mask is the image that people think of when someone talks about the Phantom of the Opera. This musical first debuted on October 9th in 1986 in London at Her Majesty's Theatre. The original London cast ended up opening the show in New York City on Broadway 2 years later. The Broadway version of The Phantom of the Opera opened January 26, 1988 at the Majestic Theatre, and it ended up winning 7 Tony Awards. The Phantom played its 7,486th performance on January 9, 2006, which then smashed the record for the longest-running Broadway musical in history. The story continues to be a huge success, as it is still running on Broadway in this year, and has been seen over by 130 million people since it debuted in 1986. So, the original intent for the Phantom for this story was to have full facial deformity, and thus there would be a full mask similar to the one seen in posters and promotional material for the musical when it first started in 1986. However, as having full makeup as well as the mask would make expression and singing difficult for the lead actor, and thus they cut the mask in half. Whoever made the Phantom deformed at birth like the original story, and with his mask he also wears a wig due to him going bald. His deformities include deformed lips, mismatched eyes, a missing right eyebrow, an elongated right nostril, a large gash with exposed skull tissue and bony protrusions in his right cheek. In 1989, there were 2 more movie versions that were adapted. One was by Maximilian Schell and the other was by Robert Englund. In Schell's version, it relates back to the horror genre. The Phantom wears a mask that is stone gray, which resembles a statue's face, and then a mask that resembles his face prior to his disfiguration, which was supposedly caused by acid. However, it is said that his deformity looks like the 1925 version, with it being skull-like and not like acid had burnt him. England's version was extremely grotesque. In his version, he had the Phantom make a deal with the devil, stating that people would love him for his music and it would live forever, but that his music would be the only thing he would be loved for, and as a result, his face was mutilated, missing his hair, teeth, nose, and one ear. The Phantom wears a wig, fake teeth, a flesh mask made out of his victim's flesh, and it's sewed to his face, and then covers those stitches with makeup. He wears a skull mask with his Red Death costume when he attends the ball. In 1990, a man by the name of Charles Dance created a TV miniseries from the story. The adaptation of the story won 2 Emmy Awards and was nominated in 1991 for a Golden Globe Award. Dance took on the traditional romantic take of the Phantom and made him elegant in who he was and how he dressed. The mask worn by Charles in this TV miniseries maintains the romantic approach of the whole production, emphasizing his masculine features and revealing just enough of his face to show expression without showing too much of his disfigured skin. This Phantom wore multiple masks over his plain white mask, and his deformed face was never shown on camera. He had a gold Apollo mask when he was with Christine, a black mask for when he was angry, a skull mask when he killed Joseph Bouquet, and a crying clown mask with black tears, which he wore when he thought that Christine would never return to him. The last and more recent movie was made in 2004, which was an adaptation closely related to Andrew Lloyd Webber's production. One thing that is different from the movie and the theater production is that in the movie, the chandelier falls near the end of the movie, while the chandelier in the theater production falls at the end of Act 1. Otherwise, this movie's plotline is close to the original novel's plotline. This movie is extremely popular, and it had Gerard Butler play the iconic Phantom role. The masks that were in the film were the iconic half-face white mask, a black Columbina mask, and the detailed skull mask from the scene Masquerade. So as we've seen, the story has been around for over 100 years and will most likely be around for 100 more. With different adaptations of the story as well as the mask, one can wonder, well, how was this iconic mask made? For the theater production mask, it is quite interesting as to how they make it. For this production, the iconic mask was originally designed by Maria Borgensen, and it was realized by milliner Rodney Gordon. Borgensen was the set and costume designer for the Phantom of the Opera, and she was known to have created the most famous chandelier in the theatrical history. She worked in theater for over 32 years and did 125 designs for opera, ballet, and theater productions. She was honored with 2 Tony, 2 Outer Critics Circle, and 2 Los Angeles Drama Critics Awards. The way the Phantom mask is made is actually quite interesting, and it's a way that we haven't used in mask making class. So here I have a link of a video of somebody who works making the Phantom masks, and he pretty much goes through the step-by-step process that he does or he uses to make the Phantom mask. But just to sum it up, it's made out of a PVC plastic, and it's by vacuum form plastic. So at first the Phantom mask is sculpted out of clay, which is made over a life cast of the actor's face. And after this there's a plaster cast that is made, which is a negative, and then another one that is done that is a positive. Once that positive plaster is set, the mask will then be made through vacuum forming, which is when heat is applied to a sheet of thermoplastic, the plastic, and then once this heat is placed over the thermoplastic, this thermoplastic softens, and then that is placed over the object, and then air is sucked out in a vacuum suction. After that, the mask is cut and shaped for the actor playing the Phantom, and the wire is installed that holds the mask to the face. And then after that, it's painted, and there is a combination of colors that it is painted, such as white, brown, dark gray, pink, and a matte finish. And to finish the mask, there is a leather lining, which is shaped and glued over the wire to help with the comfort of the actor. And so with the show, at first they had their own custom-made mask. Each actor had their own custom-made mask, which was sculpted to their own life cast. However, the production crew decided to have 5 stock designs and to stop sculpting a new one for every new Phantom. that had entered the show. So when a new Phantom was introduced, he would try on all 5 of the stock designs to see what would fit him best, and then from there it would be modified if needed. The Phantoms on the show would have at least 2 masks, just in case if one breaks or if it disappears. On this last slide, I had found information about Sam Fleming, who is the associate costume designer, and here are some links to some videos that she had done where she did some meet and greets with people and talked about the Phantom Mask and the design and how she and Maria Borgensen went through the process of the design of the mask, and some other information that I may not have talked about in this presentation. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all learned a little bit something about the Phantom of the Opera mask and the story itself. I really enjoyed this project, and I hope you do too. So, thank you for listening.